There were thin, wispy white clouds floating through the beautiful blue sky that seemed to go on forever. I was thinking about the person I loved the most every day when I was staring up at the sky. Even though it's been 5 years, I still can't get over her memory and go on. Similar to one of those clouds, I float aimlessly, propelled by the current. Parting from someone is frequently as abrupt as meeting them. I was captivated by someone who looked exactly like my wife, even though I had vowed to never marry anyone else. Will you marry me? I had entirely lost the ability to smile and love. I firmly sealed my feelings inside a lock. However, it was her who succeeded in opening that lock. Alex is my name. I get up, go to work, and endure the same old routine every day, fighting my way home on a crowded metro. Yes, I just celebrated my 30th birthday, but I don't give a damn. Another year has passed, and nothing has changed in my life. My friends joined me in celebrating. I drank a little, smiled politely, and returned home to a birthday that had no taste. Nothing is able to fill the void in my heart. Emma, who used to accompany me on my birthday each year, will not be returning. Emma, my wife, and I first connected in high school. On the final day of our school festival, I told her I loved her under the fireworks, and she replied yes. Emma was a woman everyone admired. She was lively, intelligent, and full of life. Hey Alex, your tie is crooked again. I was having trouble tying my tie on the first morning after we moved in together as young professionals. Emma promptly helped me straighten it after sighing at my clumsiness. You can tie ties quite well. Working out on another man? Her cheek turned as red as a ripe apple, so I poked it to torment her. She turned aside and stammered an excuse while puffing out her cheeks like a balloon. In order to avoid making a mistake when I became your wife, I rehearsed on Dad. The only man outside of my family who I will ever touch in this way is you. Her direct response made me chuckle nevertheless. I fell even more in love with her when she pouted and told me not to laugh. I had to stoop to look her in the eyes because we were so different in height. She would blush and lean in closer when I did it. Even after we were married, this remained our morning ritual. Even if we had children in the future, we intended to remain a loving partnership. And for that reason, it came as a sudden shock to me. Emma? Oh no. Would you kindly open your eyes? How cruel God can be. What did I or Emma do to merit this? I fell into a fog and lost interest in everything after losing her so abruptly. Concerned about me, friends and family gave me matchmaking offers after I sent her to the stars. However, I rejected them all. Emma was the only person I could see myself with for the rest of my life. 5 years later, nothing has changed. I find myself staring at the sky in blankness as I watch the thin white clouds move gently, perhaps influenced by the breeze. I wonder if Emma is out there in space. If she saw me now like this, what would she think? My recollections of Emma engulf me day after day, weighing me down and gradually pulling me into an endless abyss. Perhaps noticing my state, my boss Tom suggested something to me. He offered me a 1-year transfer to a branch office in the countryside starting next month. He described it as a place rich in greenery, with fresh air and a sky full of stars at night. There's a beautiful avenue lined with cherry trees, a bright and sunny beach, the sound of autumn insects you hardly hear in the city, along with winter skies as clear as glass. Tom reminisced about his hometown as he described the healing power of the natural beauty there, something he thought might soothe my burnt-out spirit. Feeling guilty for causing even my colleagues to worry, I decided to accept the offer. I had been considering moving for a while. Staying here, I couldn't escape Emma's lingering presence. Even at home, I could find no peace. Emma was supposed to be my beloved wife, yet over time, her memory had come to haunt me like a curse that darkened my heart. If I stay this way, I won't even know how to face her when I see her again someday. Not wanting to turn my cherished wife into a restless spirit, I chose to leave this place. Although I could have taken a company-provided apartment, I preferred to avoid seeing my coworkers outside of work. They all knew my story, and I didn't want their sympathetic glances. People at the new branch probably wouldn't know about my past, but shaking off the weight of my memories would still take time. I decided to find a place where I'd have as little contact with my colleagues as possible. With the company's housing allowance, I rented an apartment I found on my own. Excuse me. A soft voice reached my ears. My name's Rachel, and I live next door. Nice to meet you. My first impression of her was that she seemed terribly shy, almost like a ghost fading into the background. Her long bangs even made it hard to read any expression on her face. But since she greeted me, I had no choice but to reply. I'm Alex. Nice to meet you too. With that, Rachel quickly bowed and scurried back to her apartment. Since then, for some reason, she'd let out a small gasp whenever she saw me, treating me almost as if I were the ghost. Did I do something wrong? Wondering about it, I settled into life here, and soon 3 months had passed. Eventually, Rachel seemed to get used to my presence. She began greeting me, albeit in a soft, nearly inaudible voice. I'm sorry if I was rude at first. I'm a bit nervous around people. Perhaps it was some form of social anxiety. If so, her timid behavior made sense, and there was no need for me to think too much about it. Then one day, as I was heading home straight from work, I heard raised voices in front of our apartment building. I didn't know the man, but the woman's voice was unmistakably Rachel's. I didn't want to get involved in any trouble, but the atmosphere was tense, and I couldn't ignore it. Do you need something from her? When I asked, both of them turned to look at me. Rachel let out a small gasp, and the man, flustered, quickly left. I'd always been over 6 feet tall, and though I wasn't aware of it, people often said I had a stern look. Emma used to tell me, "You're misunderstood a lot, but you're such a kind person, Alex." The man caught sight of me, then hurriedly disappeared from view. Rachel then bowed her head. Thank you for helping me. Seeing her looking apologetic, I decided not to press her about the incident. There have been reports of strange men around here lately. It might be dangerous for you to go out alone. I warned her and was about to head back to my room when I felt a strange pull, something stopping me. You said the other day that you'd let me thank you sometime. So, could I ask now? That day, she must mean a few days ago. I'd been thinking of Emma, getting dangerously close to a spiral, and ended up drinking alone at a bar after work. I just wanted to forget, to erase this feeling somehow. Out of guilt toward Emma, I found myself wishing that this heaviness in my heart would just disappear. Barely managing to get home, my vision blurred, and I struggled to get my keys from my bag. With a heavy sigh, I slumped against my door. I'll stay here and let the night breeze cool my head until I sober up a bit. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, I was waking up, feeling as if I were being dragged. Oh, you're awake. It turned out Rachel had found me asleep outside my door, retrieved my keys, and was helping me inside. I'm sorry. I can manage from here. I'll repay you for this someday, I said. After that, I blacked out, waking up the next morning with a hangover I deeply regretted. Rachel must be talking about that night. When I looked back, Rachel was lightly holding on to the edge of my sleeve. If it's not too much trouble, would you have dinner at my place? Her face was still hidden under her long bangs, as unreadable as ever. But this time Rachel, who usually never voiced her own opinions, was expressing one for the first time. Would that really be a thank you? It almost feels like I'd owe you again, I said. At my words, she lowered her head, looking a bit troubled. Her hair cascaded over her face, concealing it even further. With a silent sigh, I turned fully toward her. Are you still afraid of me? She gave a small shudder, and her pale fingers gripping my sleeve trembled slightly. Emma used to brush it off, but given my height and somewhat intimidating expression, I must seem daunting, especially to someone as small as Rachel. I chuckled wryly, remembering how even my female coworkers used to say I looked intimidating. Then, as the big guy I am, I looked down at her, noticing how she seemed to shrink slightly under my gaze. To meet her eyes, I slowly bent down. Even though I tried to make eye contact, her hair fell in the way, making it hard to see her eyes. I didn't want to make her more nervous, so I spoke gently. I have no reason to refuse. I haven't done any grocery shopping today, so if you're offering, I'd be grateful, if that's what you'd like, Rachel. As I said this, I thought I saw a faint smile on her face, and with it, a strange feeling began to settle in my chest. I'd never been swayed by a woman's words before, so I couldn't quite understand why Rachel's words affected me now. Perhaps it was just that I felt unable to leave someone so fragile to face things alone. I decided to accept this feeling for what it was and let it pass. Upon entering her apartment, though, something felt off right away. In the shoe rack sat a pair of men's shoes, and a large suit jacket hung neatly on the rack by the door. Spotless and carefully maintained, it was clear someone else lived here. The coffee cup Rachel handed me was also a matching pair, hinting at the presence of a man in her life. And there it was again, that same strange feeling, now morphing into something darker, closer to resentment. No, I have no right to feel this way. I'd sworn to always love Emma, hadn't I? Silencing my conflicting thoughts, I took another look around. It was clear now that someone else shared this space. I'd assumed Rachel lived alone, but evidently I was wrong. I'd only ever seen her coming and going by herself, and there was never any sign of a man. So then, a semi-living situation, perhaps. If you have a partner, wouldn't he be uncomfortable with you inviting someone like me over? I'd be fine with a different way of saying thanks, if that's the case. The question itself held no ulterior motive. It was just something I asked directly. So why did my words falter at the end? Well, had I said something offensive without realizing it? The thought made me uneasy. For a moment, I noticed small droplets falling by Rachel's feet. It was as if all the emotions she had been holding back were now overflowing, forming a small puddle there. For some reason, I had made her cry. Realizing this, I quickly apologized. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it in a strange way. But Rachel shook her head slowly and heavily. No, it's not that. Despite her words, her tears continued to fall unchecked. Realizing this wasn't going anywhere, I gently guided her to sit on the sofa. She settled down quietly, her eyes tightly shut as if trying to endure something. Seeing her like that, I found myself unexpectedly projecting my own experiences onto her. For a while, I watched her from a short distance, glancing at my phone as I kept an eye on her until she calmed down. I figured she wouldn't want to be stared at while she was crying, so this was my own clumsy way of being considerate. Aren't you supposed to say something comforting in times like these? A voice drifted through my mind. Emma wasn't here, and no matter where I searched in this world, I'd never find her again. Still, even if she had been here, Rachel and I were nothing more than neighbors. Nothing more, nothing less. So I just stayed quiet, doing the only thing I felt I could, waiting. A few minutes later, her sobs finally began to subside, and she spoke quietly. I'm sorry you had to see that. No, it's fine, I replied. In my usual unthinking way, that was all I could say. The silence that followed filled the room, resonating against the walls bathed in the amber light of sunset. It was broken only by the sound of our breathing. After a while, Rachel looked up slightly, her gaze falling on a photo on the shelf. Following her gaze, I saw a framed photo of a couple. The man looked down at the woman with a gentle, affectionate expression. The woman, modestly yet affectionately, wrapped her hand around his waist and looked up at him with eyes full of love. In a subdued tone, Rachel spoke. That's my husband. She paused, then added, He passed away. Her words hit me hard, tightening something in my chest. The presence I'd sensed here wasn't just some imagined feeling. It was the lingering traces of her late husband. I believe, Alex, you also lost your wife before her time, didn't you? I vaguely remembered mentioning it in passing to one of the older ladies in the neighborhood. She had asked why I still wore a ring on my left hand, and when I explained, she'd looked at me with sympathy. I'd never wanted anyone's pity, which is why I usually kept quiet about it. But I hadn't expected Rachel to remember. It's been 5 years now. I admitted. I'm just a man who can't seem to move on, clinging to the memory of his wife. If anything, I'd prefer people laughed it off rather than pitying me for it. I slowly closed my eyes. Whenever I did, Emma's bright smile and the sound of her laughter came to mind, vivid like sunlight. Maybe no matter what, I'll never be able to forget her. Then, as if sensing the thoughts swirling inside me, Rachel spoke, cutting right to the heart of it. Even after rising to the heavens, would a spouse truly be happy to know that the one they left behind can't let go of them? I opened my eyes. As my feelings for Emma gradually transformed into a lingering attachment, binding me, I questioned whether I could still call it love. I couldn't answer Rachel's question. To think that Rachel too had lost her beloved partner, and like me, she hadn't been able to break free from the sorrow of that loss. She continued her life on autopilot. My husband passed away 3 years ago, she said. Since that day, this room has been frozen in time. His suit, his bag, his shoes, everything remains exactly as it was. I haven't been able to escape that moment. She couldn't bring herself to clear away his belongings because it would make his absence feel final, leaving her too heartbroken to handle his possessions. I understood that feeling all too well. Even though I'd moved here, I still kept my place in New York. And besides, I'd left all of Emma's belongings just as they were. I could now see why Rachel had left her husband's things untouched, why she held on to such heavy emotions. And yet, there was one thing I couldn't understand. You still think about him, don't you? So why invite me here? Rachel looked at me with a resolute expression. Then, seemingly without reason, she said, "Please marry me." She tilted her head slightly to the side, her heavy bangs slowly following the pull of gravity, drifting softly. Then, one dark hollow, devoid of any highlight, fixed intently on me. It was as if I were being watched by a predator. My body froze, unable to move. Her eyes held a uniquely haunting color, like the endless depths of darkness, as if all dreams and hopes for tomorrow had been drained. They were the eyes of someone familiar with despair. I recognized them immediately. Once, after losing Emma, I looked in the mirror for the first time and saw my own eyes. Rachel now had those same eyes. I swallowed hard and managed to speak. "What do you mean by that? We've only known each other a short time, and we're not even together. So why bring up marriage all of a sudden?" As if anticipating my reaction, Rachel replied in a calm voice, "We should use each other. So please, let me use you, and use me in return." I couldn't look away from her eyes. And just like that, a week passed. I barely remembered what happened after that. We had dinner together, exchanged few words, and I returned to my apartment. But all night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about her proposal. The shock of her sudden offer to marry was one thing, but her words about using each other. I hadn't fully grasped what she meant, and I ended up declining her proposal, at least for the time being. But that night continued to haunt me, replaying in my mind. Even at work, no matter how much I thought about it, no clear answer emerged, and time marched on relentlessly. Lately, work had kept me busy with little chance to go home, staying overnight at the office or at nearby hotels. Occasionally, I'd swing by my place to pick up some belongings, usually well past midnight. Before I knew it, 2 months had flown by since that strange proposal. This hectic schedule meant I naturally hadn't seen Rachel at all. And yet, inexplicably, I found myself thinking, I want to see Rachel. Unlike the superficial relationships I had back in New York, I'd connected with various people since moving here, but the person I'd spent the most meaningful time with was my neighbor Rachel. "I didn't realize you look so beautiful when you smile, Alex." I remember the day she said that, and the memory constricted my chest. Somehow, I'd found myself smiling naturally in her presence, even though I'd forgotten how to. There was no question about what those feelings meant. That evening had created a rift, but little by little, I'd started to become aware of my feelings for her. That was precisely why her sudden proposal had thrown me, making me feel I needed time and distance to think. Fortunately, I could use work as a legitimate excuse to keep that distance. But at the same time, I was beginning to lose the confidence to face her directly. I worried that the next time I met her gaze, I might lose myself and be overcome by some impulse I couldn't control. Wasn't this a betrayal? The thought gnawed at me, and without realizing it, I'd started avoiding Rachel. It was pathetic, but if I looked into those eyes again, I was certain an intense passion would pound loudly within me, commanding me, let it out now. Somehow, without realizing it, my feelings for Rachel had grown so intense that they scared me. I wanted to see her smile, to be the one to wipe away those sorrowful tears. Yet, the only person I'm supposed to love is Emma. For 5 years, I tried to lock my heart away, sealing it under the weight of self-imposed vows. No matter how many times people brought up marriage prospects, I'd rejected them, determined to spend my remaining days with Emma's memory alone. And yet now, my emotions were surging from within, demanding to break free. I had to keep any love I felt sealed for Emma alone. The inner struggle tore at me, leaving me in a constant state of indecision. No, with these feelings, I don't know what I might do. I can't meet Rachel yet. I spoke the words aloud as if trying to convince myself. Even so, the day would inevitably come when I'd return home once the work settled down. That day turned out to be a turning point. When I finally returned to the apartment, as if on cue, Rachel stepped out of her room. Her pale lips began to move slowly. "Have you made your decision?" I was about to say that I couldn't possibly have reached one, but the words stopped short. A tightness gripped my chest, as if my heart were being squeezed. Rachel pushed her long bangs aside, her fingers brushing over her face. "If I do this, would it shake your resolve?" The seconds that followed felt unbearably long. The pressure in my chest grew stronger, and I realized my breathing had grown shallow. I was utterly shaken. Emma. In a hoarse voice, I uttered the name of my beloved to Rachel and no one else. Standing before me was undoubtedly Rachel. There was no doubt. I knew it with 100% certainty. And yet, what I saw was Emma. The surreal image made my head spin, and I instinctively covered half my face with one hand. What's happening? Am I hallucinating now? It had been so long since my heart had felt this unsteady, like that day when I traced my fingers over Emma's cold cheek, unsure of what to do. Tears began to spill from my eyes. Then Rachel delivered the final blow. "Please marry me." How much time passed after that? I don't know. Minutes, maybe hours. The sun had long since set, and the warm glow of a single light filled the room where we stood. In the end, I married the woman who was, in so many ways, a reflection of my beloved wife. To put it simply, I don't regret it, but my emotions are tangled, and my thoughts have been caught up. Emma is gone, a presence forever beyond my reach. I knew that in my mind, but seeing Rachel smile at me so beautifully, so effortlessly capturing my heart, the passion I'd held back had finally overflowed. In that instant, I came to a single conclusion. Standing beside me was Rachel, still hiding her expression under long bangs. It must have surprised you, but I'm actually Emma's twin sister. I remembered Emma mentioning it once. My parents divorced when I was young, and I was too young to remember. But I found out later that I had a sister. To think that this twin sister, the one I thought of as only a distant part of Emma's past, was standing right here as Rachel. Though Rachel had a different air about her. She and Emma were identical twins, and the shock of that resemblance hit me deeply. I have no connection with my sister. I only learned the name Emma when I obtained a copy of the family registry while getting married. One day, though, I found you slumped outside the door, terribly drunk. I heard you murmur Emma. In that moment, when I was helping you inside and looked for your keys, I noticed a photo in your keychain. And there I was, or rather, my sister. Rachel took a breath and went on. You can use me if you need to. I'm the long-lost sister of your beloved Emma, and I need you to help me move forward from my husband's death. That's why I need this marriage. As she spoke, Rachel took a pair of hair-cutting scissors from somewhere and handed them to me. After my husband passed, I couldn't bear the sympathetic looks everyone gave me. So I grew my bangs out to hide my emotions and protect myself. Could you, with those hands of yours, Help cut away these remnants of my past. Why me? I asked. I did love Emma, and you're her identical twin, but you have no reason to use me, do you? If it's a man you wanted, there are plenty of others out there. So why? She remained completely still, exuding an air that all but said, "If you want to know more, do exactly as I've instructed." Reluctantly, I took the scissors and moved my fingers as directed, cutting through her bangs bit by bit. The heavy veil that had covered her face fell away. A few minutes later, she slowly lifted her head, and for the first time, I looked directly into both of her eyes. She was indeed the mirror image of Emma, but unlike Emma's bright and light spirit, she radiated a deep melancholy. And yet, as I saw her, the image of the one I had loved overlapped with hers, overwhelming me with emotions and leaving me frozen, unable to move. Is this face too painful for you to look at? I'll tell you everything. Can you stand up? I took her hand and guided her to the sofa. In the next moment, Rachel placed her hands on the floor, aligning her fingertips precisely, and pressed her forehead down against them. She had taken on a posture of complete submission. It was the first time, after losing my husband, that you were the only man who looked at me without pity, seeing me as an equal. I am, without a doubt, drawn to you, Alex. I deeply regret that I pushed you into marriage, taking advantage of the wound left by my sister, but I can't shake the feeling that finally, I'm ready to move forward with you. A person who's felt the same pain. I want to join and dare to dream of a hopeful future once more. Hearing her say all that, I let out a dry laugh. It wasn't out of mockery. I was just exasperated with myself for making her say those things. Marriage. People often do it on impulse. Whether it's a mistake or success, you don't know until later. Please, Rachel, sit up. She flinched at the sound of her name. Yes, it's true. I looked at you and saw Emma, my beloved wife. That's an undeniable fact. But there's one thing I want to make absolutely clear. I too hold feelings for you deep within my heart. I've kept my love for anyone sealed away, buried under thoughts of Emma, but I've wanted to set it free, and it was you, Rachel, who unlocked it. Just as she had helped me into my apartment that night, she had somehow slipped into the depths of my heart, bringing back emotions I thought I'd buried. I ran away that day, not because of Emma, but because I felt I owed you an apology. Someone like me shouldn't be feeling this way. I love you, but it feels wrong to keep loving you. I've been struggling with this conflict for so long. We had both been broken by grief, each bearing our own deep scars. In the beginning, it was just about sharing that understanding. But somewhere along the way, we had started to long for each other, reaching out even more than we had to our late spouses. It's been 5 years since I lost Emma. I'll never forget her, but if I continue to keep myself trapped, I feel like she'd be angry with me. I think she'd want me to move forward, to take the chance at happiness. I've been afraid of grasping it, but with you, someone who's also hurt like me, I feel like I might find the courage to reach for it again. This marriage was my choice too. While it may have begun impulsively and with hesitation, I knew now that I truly loved Rachel, not as Emma's replacement, but as someone unique and precious in her own right. Someone I wanted to protect. I don't know where this path will take us, but sometimes it's best to go with the flow. You're not Emma. You're Rachel, someone worth cherishing. And I swear here and now, I will never use you. Will you give me your answer? I felt the corners of my mouth lift into a gentle smile. How long had it been since I genuinely smiled? My days with Emma had been full of joy, but in losing her, I'd lost the very memory of how to smile. Meeting Rachel had changed that, bringing back the courage to love again. I remembered what it felt like to laugh. Gently, I wrapped my arms around her small, trembling form, careful not to break her. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should have just told you from the start that I cared for you, Alex, but I was scared. Please don't hate me. She whispered, her voice barely audible. Holding her a bit more tightly, I felt her small body stop trembling. Thank you for caring about me, and thank you for teaching me to love again. We had both been wounded and had faced our own despair. Perhaps that's why Emma and her husband had brought us together, guiding us to each other. Humans are such fleeting creatures. Once we are born, it's only natural that we will someday pass away. But that doesn't mean it's a final goodbye. Even when the body fades and we can no longer see each other in this life, a heart remains connected, a thin, unbroken thread that stretches on. And through that connection, new hope and encounters can be born, formed. I resolved to face forward and take that step, fully aware of the new person I'd sworn to protect. This time, slowly, I leaned in, casting a shadow over her face.